Hello, I'm Amber from Amber's Books and More, and this is my first Booktube video. And I thought, what better way to do your first Booktube video than to do a get to know you tag. I originally saw this from Julia at Pages and Pens, and the original book tabber's name is Phoebe. I will link them both down below so that you can look at their pages if you want to. So I'll go ahead and get started. I just want to make this a quick get to know you. So a little backstory on me. I am 34 years old. I recently discovered Booktube and I thought, wow, I found people that liked the books that I liked, people that enjoyed reading the way that I like to read, and so I'm just excited to get to know more people in the Booktube community and really get involved in readathons. And I love books. I hear a lot of people on Booktube though say that they originally started reading because of Twilight or Harry Potter, and both of those came out when I was well into my 20s, so they didn't define my childhood. So I've read since I can remember, really, and I read Babysitter's Club, and I read Sweet Valley High in the 80s, and I read Stephen King when I was way too young to be reading those kind of books, but I read them and I loved them. And now I'm excited to this new wave of different types of books available, and I'm excited to get back into reading and get back into what I love to do. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and do the tag. I have my phone down here so that I can see the questions. So number one is, what is your favorite book? So my favorite book at the moment, just recent books, not of all time, but just a recent book that I love, is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So I never even knew that these types of books existed, and I first saw this at the bookstore, and it kind of caught my eye, and I thought, what is that? So then I went online and I googled it on, well, I didn't Google it, I looked up on YouTube, and I saw so many things about this one in Gemina, which I have on my bookshelf, which I also love both of them, but I like this one a little bit more than Gemina. But this is just phenomenal. I'm not going to go into what all these books are about that I have, really, because I'm sure that these are really hyped, especially this one. So, but this one at the moment is my favorite book. So question number 2, what was your favorite book 5 years ago? So I was actually in a book slump for a long time. I went through a really depressed state, and so I haven't actually read much in the past 5 years. So instead of saying what was my favorite book 5 years ago, I'll just say what is my favorite book of all time. And that has got to be False Memory by Dean Koontz. I won't even talk about this book. You have to go, if you want to read this, you have to go into it not really knowing anything, because it's just the most crazy, twisted, awesome book I've ever read. And this really, I've read this book at least 20, this is actually my 3rd copy of it, because I originally checked it out at the library and I loved it, so then I went and bought it, and I read it so much that the front cover wore off and I had to go and replace it. So this is my favorite book of all time, or my favorite book 5 years ago, which either way it kind of works. Okay, so number 3 is, what's your favorite duology, trilogy, or series? I will go with the series that I have the most books of, and this is the Dark Hunter novels. And so this isn't a series in the way that Harry Potter is, where it follows the same character. This is companion series that has at least 25 books, I think, more if not more. And each one follows a different Dark Hunter and their romantic relationship and how they became to be. But I'll give a brief overview. Basically, a Dark Hunter is whenever someone is murdered in a really awful way and their soul screams out at the time of death for revenge. Then Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, gives them a chance for revenge, but then makes them like her workers, and then their rest of their life is spent hunting demons. And so, I mean, this is just a really awesome series, and I've read them and I have a ton of them. And the very first book that I ever went to a book signing, because I loved the author so much, was these from Sherilyn Kenyon, and this story was Acheron, and Acheron is actually my favorite character, and I got to meet the author, and she signed the book for me, and I got a picture with her, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm not going to say Harry Potter because I do love Harry Potter and it is one of my favorites, but this has a special place in my heart above Harry Potter, I think. Number 4, what is the last book you read? So I just finished The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton last night. I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning reading this. I read it in not really one sitting because I did take a break for a few hours, but I read it in the same day and it was honestly strange and beautiful. There's no other way to describe it, and this is very hyped, and they're hyped for a reason. I gave this 5 stars, and I'm thinking of doing a book review on it, but we'll see. Number 5, what was the last book of poetry that you read? I actually have never read like a full book of poetry. I've read poetry in the past. I've written poetry in the past, and I really love Edgar Allan Poe and like kind of macabre type poetry, but I've never read a book of poetry, and I think that is going to be something that I have to pick up that, and I want to read more manga this year, and I've read a little bit of manga and I really like it, so I'm sorry I don't have an answer to that question. Number 6, what book most influenced your life? So like I said, I read The Babysitter's Club and I read Sweet Valley High. Those were very contemporary, mainstream books back in the 80s. They were kind of the Harry Potter of the 80s is what I call them. And the first book that I ever read that made me realize that there were other books that were just about contemporary, about teenagers and all that kind of thing, would be considered a middle grade, I think, but it's called Time Windows by Catherine Reese. And I read this book from the library. I only read from the library back then, and I picked this up when I was probably about 11 maybe, and I loved it. And it's about this girl that can see through the dollhouse windows in this new house and see the past, and it's kind of like a time travel but not a time travel, and kind of like a ghost story but not a ghost story. It's so well written, and it really changed my entire reading life. And it was after there that I started wanting to read crazier things and started picking up the Stephen King and all that, but love this book. Number 7, what book made you ugly cry? So I've cried during a lot of books, but honestly, ugly cry to where like hyperventilating, ugly cry. Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas by James Patterson. This book crushed my soul into a million pieces, and I don't think I've ever really put it back together, and that's okay because it was a good book. And there's a made-for-TV movie as well that has Christina Applegate in it, and it's really good too. So you should take a look at this and see what it's about. I don't really want to give too much away because it would be spoilery, but this is a really good book, and I very ugly cried. Number 8, a book that made you laugh. So not many books have made me laugh out loud, but the one that did, and the one I have to bring Harry Potter in here somewhere, is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This book was so funny, like Dumbledore making the glasses fly up against the side of the Dursleys' head, and then whenever Harry gets to Ron's house, and Ron like throws open the door and throws open the curtains, and Harry's like, what's going on? And he like bumps him in the head, and Hermione's like, don't hit him. And it's just, this is a hilarious book. This is probably the funniest book, and yet it's like one of the darkest and one of the ones that made me cry the most, but yet it's so funny at the beginning. And I love Dumbledore in this. He's such a little rat bastard, right? But I love him. Number 9, a character that you would like to be for the day. And for that one, I'm going to go with Vampire Lestat and the Vampire Chronicles for Anne Rice. He's just a dangerous bad boy that's sexy and but good underneath in a way, and bad, and I love him, and I'd want to be him for a day, even though that sounds kind of weird, but that's who I pick. Number 10, a book that you dreamt about because it was so good. Now, I wouldn't say I dreamt about it because it was so good, but I dreamt about it because it was so crazy, and that is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. So she's the author, of course, that wrote Gone Girl, and I read this one actually before I read Gone Girl, and this is what made me pick up Gone Girl. And Gone Girl's not as good as this one, and Gone Girl's different than this in every way. If you didn't like Gone Girl, you may like this one, because this one doesn't have the unreliable narrator. This one it kind of floats back and forth. It's like a mystery trying to put the past and the present together to figure out what's really happened, and it's just a really good book. So number 11, a book that you DNF'd. So this DNF is not the fault of the book. This DNF is the fault of a girl that was, the first time she tried to read it, too young to grasp it, too young to appreciate it. The second time was when she was in a deep depression, and the third time was when she was just simply in a book slump, and she's now going to give it another try because of that, and that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I read about half of the first book, which was from the movie, so it was like when the movie came out, I watched the movie and loved it, so I had to pick up the book. I'm going to give this another try. So it's DNF'd for now, but of it this year, hopefully, I will at least try to finish this one. And last but not least is number 12, a book that you're excited to read. And right now I am excited to get into A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This has sounded so good. People say it's good, looks good. London. I've been following V.E. Schwab on Twitter, and I really like her as a person, so I'm really excited. I just got this in the mail like yesterday or the day before, and so I'm really excited to get into this one. So that's it for the Get to Know You tag, and I hope you guys come back eventually, you know, and watch some of my other videos. I'm excited to be able to do some maybe spoilery reviews and maybe some book hauls and unboxings and things as I get them. So sorry if the lighting is bad. I'm working that out. I'll get there. I'm still new. So until then, have a nice day wherever you are. Bye.